I'm Cheryl Moret, principal at Jasper County Middle School. I am finishing my 31st year in education. This is my second year with flexible service models, and we're excited to share our information with you.
I am Pam Edge. I'm principal of Jasper County Primary School. I've been in education now 22 years, and this is my second year with flexible service models, and I can't wait to share with you the innovative practices we did this year.
Hi, my name is Shakeirra Middlebrooks. I am a kindergarten teacher here at Jasper County Primary School. When we first started flexible service model, I was not a big fan of the idea. I thought to myself, how are we going to get kindergartners to switch classes? This is going to feel like the first day of school. As a team, we thought of a great idea to give every teacher and student a certain color depending on their quintile, and plan together to target different instructional strategies to use in our lesson. On the first day of flexible service model, the kids were so excited to have a different teacher, which made it more exciting to teach the kids. Flexible service model gave me the opportunity to target students' needs depending on their quintile and plan different hands-on activities for the students. Last year, my kids scored very low in operations and algebraic thinking. Luckily, this was one of the standards that we focused on for our flexible service model. At the end of the year, I was very proud of my students. They scored very well in that area. And I truly believe that flexible service model played a big role in helping my students meet their goal.
What I wanted to talk about as an instructional coach last year, this year I've moved to the assistant principal's position, but I still hold that instructional coach, philosophy that our instruction needs to be data-driven. And it's so important that we have not only good data, but that teachers use that data in an effective way. And what I saw last year with flexible service models is teachers taking ownership of the quality data that we were getting from the MAP assessment. And what they were doing is using that data to impact instruction in a meaningful way. And once they realized how meaningful it was going to be for their students, they were all in. And I saw them talking with confidence about what they were seeing in the data and how that was informing their instruction, and they were planning their flexible service models. They weren't really, it wasn't about the low kids or the high kids or splitting them up by ability group. It was really focusing in on sub areas in reading and math, and they were realizing how different each child was in those sub areas and how their groups could be so different and how their instruction could be accelerated or remediated in a great way when we were grouping during that time. And so they saw the power of the flexible service model, and they developed more confidence in manipulating the data and interpreting and analyzing that data, and it became a much more meaningful experience for them.
Okay, we are going to work on our FSM groups today and just make sure we're ready to start them tomorrow. Let's just review about what we've already done. So we took our students based on their MAP scores, and we formed groups based on the domain for mathematics of numbers and operations. Can anybody tell us why we chose numbers and operations to start with? Does anybody remember?
Well, that gives you the most bang for your buck.
Okay, that gives you the most bang for your buck, absolutely. And that was our lowest domain. So we chose to start with that one. We grouped our students by how they performed in that domain, starting with low to low average, average, high average to high. So we had 5 different quintiles that we looked at, and we formed 11 groups based on those quintiles. And within those quintiles, we've also looked at the students' RIT scores to see which one of those groups they should fall in, to be more specific about what they actually need. We looked at the learning continuum last week to see which concepts students had already mastered and which ones they were ready to learn. And we chose who was going to teach each group based on what we thought our strengths were in what area with what group of students. So we're going to share today what our lesson plan ideas are, and let's just kind of feedback. I think that's a great idea. I tried this, you may want to try this, and we'll go from there. So let's start in our low quintile. Miss Willard, will you start for us and tell us what your plan is for tomorrow?
Yes. I have 11 students, and so I went to the learning continuum and just looked at what 151 to 160 would be. And part of the thing that they need is some new vocabulary. Greater than, less than, largest, smallest, things like that. So I'm going to have some vocabulary cards when we're talking about the numbers. We are going to practice counting. Theirs is counting from 0 to 20. And so we're going to practice doing a little game called Blast Off, and they'll go around and number from 1 to 20, and the one that gets to 20 blasts off and sits down. Anyway, so they have to renumber. But the main thing that we're going to do is compose numbers within 20 with a tens frame. So they'll each have their own tens frame, and they'll be composing those numbers.
Wonderful. Miss Robinson, for the average group?
We are going to focus on numbers to 100, and we're also going to start off with the interactive videos to get them moving around a little bit. Then we're going to do the pass the paper, and we're going to do that to 100. And then we're going to have a scoop game where we'll have, it's kind of like a scavenger hunt. They have to go around the room, and they'll see a series of numbers, and there'll be 1 or 2 missing numbers in each of those series, and they have to fill in the missing numbers. Because this group, that is one of the things that they are low in and having difficulties is finding missing numbers and counting on. We're also going to take dry erase boards, and we're going to start at a number, say 53, and they'll have to write the next 5 or 6 numbers in that series on the dry erase board.
Oh, wonderful. How did you know? You said these students know how to do this, or this is their gap. How did you know that? Because all of these students aren't in your class for your group.
No, but they're grouped, with the map test scored them that way. They grouped them by quintiles.
Okay, so you were able to look at the learning continuum for
Yes,
that
and see that,
quintile.
yes.
Okay, that makes sense. And Miss Lackey?
Well, I have the high quintile and the gifted students from the 174 to 190 range. We will start with like an exercise to 120 because that is the standard as a whole group, but also we will break into 3 groups, and one will be the scoop where they interact with that and fill in the missing numbers to 120, starting at various numbers. Sometimes it may be a missing number at the beginning, middle, or end, it depends. We will be working and doing a lot of representation. We'll be working beyond, because this group's really more advanced, so they're ready to step beyond that. But the one thing I noticed that some of them did have trouble understanding, you know, kind of seeing that hundreds and going beyond, and so we want to represent it with the base 10, so they're not going from the 100s to the thousands, because they tend to sometimes get that 0 in there. But looking more at representation to building those numbers as well as writing beyond, and then looking at a lot of number patterns within the 120 chart. And we did today, and one of my groups was 1 less, 1 more, 10 less, 10 more, and just no 120 chart around you, and then moving beyond 120 to see those number patterns.
Which goes along exactly what second grade is working on right now.
Okay.
So you're building, if you have that high average in that gifted group, that makes sense, because that's exactly what second grade's working on with their students. Okay, and why did we decide for our lower groups to have 11 students and our higher groups to have 20 to 21 students?
Most of those need more one-on-one attention, while
Okay.
my higher kids, you can give them something independently, and they can pretty well handle that task with one direct, you know, me not having to give repeated directions.
Okay. Do we already have a plan for our students who have not been map tested yet? Because we've gotten new students, I know a few of you this week, and they're not in our map program to test them yet. So what's our plan for those students?
Well, just based on like classroom observation, weekly quick checks, and those types of things, we are going to put them in the group where we feel like they will fall.
Okay.
And where they are lacking or where they need to be advanced.
Um,
Higher ones.
After we test them, are we going to leave them? I'm just curious, are we going to leave them in that group, or are we going to move them to where they test in? Or are we going to
Go
make
to the
that
place
decision
where they-
based on
Yes.
I'd say
Where they
we
fall.
place them in
Yes.
the quintile that
they fall in?
suits them, because we don't want them to have them in too high of a group if we think, you know, if they're struggling, but then we don't want to hold them back if they're ready to accelerate.
Wonderful. What's our plan for transitioning? How are we going to get them to each room? Are we using a color system, or will you share with us your idea?
I just went ahead and made cards with all the name, you know, and then when we start our reading, like I have my math one in one color, and then we'll switch it to the reading for the other. Most of my kids will probably take like a little walk to make sure they know where each classroom is, and they kind of have an understanding, but we usually just all stood outside our door and kind of were there ready to go, and we would point to that teacher, and they kind of had
And they
to
would
get-
come line up.
They lined up right outside each room, and then Miss Copeland would come down the hall and meet at the very end. But luckily, I mean, I have quite a few that are grouped within classes, so they'll
So
be
they can
buddied
move them
up.
together.
What is our ones place? 2. Tens? 5. Hundreds? 9. Okay, so what would this number be altogether? 952. Awesome. Okay, so let's see. What does this 0 represent here? If this one is our hundreds, this one goes back to our thousands place. Is there anything in our thousands place? No. What about our 10,000s place? What is this number? 7. And what about our 100,000s place? 4. And then we take it all the way to our house that's really, whoo, it's hot, it's smoky. What is this one going to be? Our millions. Okay.
Remember earlier this year when we took our MAP test? I'm going to explain to you what it was and how we use that information at Jasper County Middle School. So this particular year in 6th grade, we gave you the the MAP test, and we're going to look at your score. We're going to look at how you did compared to other students in the grade, and then we're going to look at what you specifically need to work on. At the end of the year, we're going to compare that data, and then when we compare that data, we're going to set some additional goals for you for 7th grade. All right? So, do you have any questions before we get started? All right. So, in August, when we gave the test, you scored a 216. And when I first give this to people, they look at it and they go, I don't know what that means. So this particular score right here tells me how ready you are to receive instruction. I look at a grid like this and I compare what other 6th grade students score on a norm reference and other 6th grade students that are 50% ready are just a little bit above your score. So we've got a little bit of work to do, but when I compare your score to our school system and the norm reference, you're right in line with what other students are doing. This tells me you are ready for 6th grade instruction, all right? We can look at this information and the computer gives us an idea of what kind of growth we can expect from you throughout the year. And we're going to use that to set some goals for you. The computer says that you should be able to hit a score of 223 by the end of the year with a 7-point gain. So my recommendation is to go ahead and give you a 7-point goal, and then when we meet again in December, we'll look and see, are you going to reach that goal? All right? Now, given that I already know your score for December, because we're looking at all of your scores at one time, I know that your score, you did reach this goal in December. Can you tell me some things that you did to help you reach that goal?
I eliminated my answer choices. First I read either if it's an equation or I solved it on a piece of paper. Then I eliminated my choices. And if it was a word problem, I would pick it apart and use key terms to basically like pick it apart and like then choose my answer wisely and then write my answer down when I got that way of my thinking.
Okay, so those are some good strategies that you used, and you can definitely tell that it paid off because you reached the goal that we set for you. Now, do you have questions for me?
No.
No. Do you have anything that you feel like you need to work on?
Just improve with my fluency.
Okay, well, there's only one last thing I want to share with you about what you might need to work on, and I get this information about specifics from these raw scores. And these raw scores come from what they call concept bands, RIT bands. And we get these bands and it gives me specific skills and concepts to work on in each of these 4 domains. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy of this and give to your mom so that she can help you with being very comfortable with this in addition to what's being introduced at home, in the classroom. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so at the beginning of the year, I looked at this and it said you had a 216, which would have put you in this band right here. And that's why we spend a lot of time working on integers learning how to add and subtract, multiply and divide positive and negative numbers. We spent a lot of time on putting them in order with the fractions and the decimals, with the rational numbers. We started working on and introducing some of the types of graphs. We started working on types of linear equations, and we started working on some of this information with exponents. This was information that was introduced, and this was information that you needed to maintain. And that's why when I told you, your mom would ask, what do I need to work on? I would give her those types of skills that you practice with different websites. So when we take this again in 7th grade, I'm going to pull the same information. I'm going to have the conference with you, and then I'll share that information with your mom and let her know what you need to work on as well. Okay? Do you think this is going to help you be successful?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, that would end our 6th grade conference. All right. So here we are back again. We're going to look at how you did at all year 6th grade, and we're going to start building the 2nd year using your map data. So this year, you started, I'm proud to say, 1 point higher than you were at the end of 6th grade. Most students lose instruction over the summer. You didn't. So that's a wonderful thing to start off with. We're going to look at your areas of strength and weakness, and we're going to look at things that we want to work on to make sure you get the most bang for your buck this year. All right? I want to challenge you to do something a little bit more, because I want to see if we can get you all the way up to the 8th grade cut score to start the year from before this year ends. And to do that, I need to add 2 more points to that score. So to get you from here all the way up to this score, I need to get you an 8-point increase. And what I would recommend is we try to set you about a 4-point gain between now and December, and a 4-point gain from December to May. Now, to do that, I'm digging a little deep into that data, going back to this concept bands again to see what do we need to work on to make sure we can get you there and make sure that you are as ready as you can possibly be. In addition to that, we're going to go back over some absolute value, some rational numbers, some complex numbers, and some functions, where we did that a little bit last year in 6th grade at the end of the year, but we probably didn't go deep enough for everybody to hit mastery. Now, there is one thing I want to bring to your attention. Remember last year when I said you were spending a lot of time on test questions? You remember last year when we talked about that? We want to make sure that we relax when we take our test, okay? So throughout the year, I want you to really practice just believing, I can do this, I can do this. And I do want to show you a couple of things that are probably going to amaze you. Do you see all these domains that you did in 6th grade and the domains you did in 7th grade? In all of these areas here, if I were to go back and compare how you did in statistics in 6th grade to how you did on statistics in 7th grade on the first test at the very beginning of the year in 6th grade, what do you see with those numbers? What have they done?
Increase.
They've increased. What's happened with my rational numbers at the beginning of the year, 6th grade to 7th grade? You went up almost 10 points, didn't you? What's happened here with geometry, with those numbers? They stayed about the same, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
So we want to work on that just a little bit. And with our algebraic thinking, what's happened here with algebraic thinking? They stayed about the same. So we want to make sure we address that just a little bit, but we want to make sure we really recognize that we have made a huge gain in several of our areas, okay? Now, to be ready for 8th grade, what are some things we got to do?
But basically do some studying at home, get ready for no matter if it's a class test or it's a map test or milestones test, I need to always be studying, like relaxing, not worrying about getting it wrong, have some confidence, and be able to use my ability of
Because
picking apart, analyzing, and working it on a piece of paper.
Because this data is showing what? Or is this data showing that you're starting to learn it? Is this data starting to convince you that you're getting better? So if you let me do my job and you just focus on the skills that you got to learn, you're going to make the gains that you need, right? No more worrying about anything. We're just going to focus on learning what we got to learn. Does that sound like a deal? All right. Now,
Good morning, guys. So today, good morning.
Good morning.
So what we're going to do today is we are going to make thinking caps. What kind of thinking caps are we going to make today? Positive thinking caps, because what do we want to think when we go and take our test?
Open-minded.
Open-minded, because we're not going to be
No closed-minded.
no closed-minded. What did we say when we take the test? It's not it's I can't. So what we're going to do today is we're going to think of some positive thoughts that we can tell ourselves so that when we wear our hats, when we take our test, what kind of thoughts are we going to be thinking?
Positive.
Positive thoughts. What are some things that we can write on our hats? Why don't you pick you a marker? Pick you a color that's going to make you think positive for that test. Edgar. Minded. M-I-N-D-E-D. E-D. There you go. Good job. All right, Edgar, give me one. You were always good with one. What's something I can tell myself when I get in there in that test and I start getting nervous and I'll be like, I got my thinking cap on.
Breathe in and breathe out.
Breathe in, breathe out. Very good. You ready?
Can I do it?
We'll let Rory do it this time. All right, we're going to watch the sphere. Yeah, you can put your markers down. All right, ready?
This is like another planet.
It is. Breathe in through your nose. Out through your mouth. Very good. Again. Very good. What's Miss Warner always say? What are you?
Awesome sauce.
What are we?
Awesome sauce.
And we can do anything we put our mind to. We just have to think positive.
My name is Regina Jackson. I am a second grade teacher at Jasper County Primary School. Last year, our school looked at some scores and we decided there were some areas that kids needed some help in, either remediation-wise or to accelerate students. So we began flexible service models. I can say that I was always a fan of the idea. I thought it would be exciting. You got to see other kids. You would get to work with groups based on their needs. So I always was on board for the idea. Once we started, we really realized that it was a great benefit to the children to focus with a group that were just focusing on those skills those children needed, whether to move them on to the next level or help them fill in some gaps that they had. We used our map data, which is very specific in giving you what children need. So we were able to focus in on those ideas and those concepts that children were missing or needed to move on with. And in second grade, we saw great growth, and it was a great program for us. We saw great growth. The numbers proved that what we did worked. And I think that although I was already a fan, people who were not on board jumped on board and really enjoyed it. You got to see other kids. The kids were very engaged. The teachers were very engaged. So I think all around that it was a great program for us and worked very well.